Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Impetus Health. I am Dr. Sean Hiller, and today I am with Dr. Sean Hiller. I'm alone in the studio today, and that is totally fine. We're going to get into a topic that is probably one of the number one questions that I've received since I've been in the healthcare world. I think I think everyone if you're in healthcare in general, nurses to physical therapists to doctors, even coaches and trainers probably get this question a lot. And the question is, why am I hurt? How did I get injured? Why am I experiencing this? And that is a very difficult answer, to be honest with you. There's so many factors that go into it, but there are a few factors that are quite a bit more important than other factors. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And hopefully we can clear up this topic because, face it, everybody has faced an injury before. And if you think back on your life, even if you're sitting here listening to this and you don't have any injuries right now and you've never had, and you're feeling fine, you're like, I'm tiptoeing through the days, I feel good. I guarantee you can think back on a time to where you were injured. And you can think back on a time to where you had an injury, something nagging you, whether large or small, and you didn't know why. Didn't make any sense. You just couldn't figure it out. We have some answers for why we experience this. We have answers for why we experience injuries, at least based off statistics and general population studies. And then, of course, when you get down into the nitty gritty of it, you're going to get into personal factors, and those become more difficult. But from the surface level, we can give a pretty good shot as to why injuries occur majority of the time in general. This is not going to cover everything, but it's going to answer a lot of our questions. And hopefully, by answering that question why we're injured in a very general sense, we can take the steps we need to take to avoid injuries in the general sense. There are several things we can do to limit them. So we're going to get into that today. What has sparked me to do this episode was I was thinking back. I recently did an Instagram and Facebook Live on this same topic, but back in 2022, I had a terrible injury. For me, it was an awful, awful injury. I talked about it on the live. Feel free to check that out. But I had a debilitating neck or shoulder injury that rendered the use of my right arm entirely incompetent. It couldn't do anything. I couldn't lift a cup. I couldn't lift my arm. Literally, there was a time I tried to pick up a solo. I believe it was a solo cup. I know it was a cup full of water. That's it. And I couldn't pick it up. I would go to lift the cup and my hand would fall immediately into Erb's palsy, which is basically when your hand just kind of caves in, your whole arm literally caves in because you're weak. You don't have the strength to actually lift it. And that was with a solo cup of water, y'all. It was debilitating. It was terrible. And thinking back, it's one of those things, I don't know why, but I can put some pieces together. And hopefully while I put the pieces together of why I suffered this injury, it will help you answer the question of why you are suffering from your injuries or your issues. And maybe help us do some things to go in the other direction. And that's what I had to do ultimately. So the year is 2012 and we're training hard. At the time I was on a hopeful semifinal team. We had hopes. We thought this might be the year we can make it to the CrossFit Games with our team. We had a really, really good team. We had two athletes on our team, two ladies on our team, my wife being one of them, Ellie, and another girl, Sydney Smith, who was young at the time, but I think Sydney's going to make semifinals in CrossFit as an individual. I think it's 2024 at the time of this recording, and I think she's doing a team that they'll make semifinals as a team, and they have a really good shot at going to the games. But Sydney was on our team too. Then we have another guy, Aston Dommel, who's been competitive for a long time. Me and Aston both are not exactly semifinal level individuals, but we were good team athletes. We were great for a team. So we really thought that our team had a shot. And I'm training hard. I'm putting in some serious effort. I'm training. And this is important for what we're talking about. This is important. I'm not just listing random stuff. This is important for our conversation of why did I get injured? And you can be asking yourself, think through what injuries you have had, or think through what injury you have right now. And hopefully you can connect the dots to what I'm talking about. And this will answer some questions, hopefully, help you get out of the pain cave. But at the time I was training hard. I was every day, Monday through Friday, I was getting up early before work, and I was running. Running is one of my big time weaknesses. And for about a year, before this injury, I was running every morning for somewhere between 50 minutes and an hour and 10 minutes as a 10K training program. And I was pushing it. I mean, I was really getting after it. Then I would work all day. I would get here to the clinic. I'd get to the clinic around probably around 6:30 or 7. And I would work all day until about 5:30, dealing with different things. Stress levels were likely very high at the time. So stress levels were high. I'm doing all this training in the morning, and then I would leave the gym and I would I would leave the clinic and I would go to the gym, and I would spend another 2.5 hours in the gym. This is my daily routine. And in that 2.5 hours, it wasn't, it was getting after it. I was very, very efficient in the gym. I would immediately go from one workout, rest for 2 or 3 minutes, start the next workout, start the next strength component, whatever it is. I did that consistently. And then we got into the CrossFit Open. And if you're really training for the semifinal level, especially as we were as a team, the CrossFit Open is still training season. You're not really putting much into the Open itself. You want to do well, you plan your day out to do well for the Open. You really think through and strategize your workouts, but it's going to be one of those things where you still train in the morning, you do the Open workout, and you still try to train after it. And we were doing that. So went along, did the Open, went and did the CrossFit quarterfinals. After that, we did them as individuals, and then we also did them as a team. And really, I never deloaded during any of this. I was putting in probably 3 hours a day, maybe 3.5 hours a day of training on top of working full time, and likely on top of I was probably taking in around 3 to 3,200 calories a day then, which is not enough. So I'm going into a state called overtraining. I was significantly overtrained. My central nervous system fatigue levels were very high. My body fatigue was very high. I was groggy all the time, very, very groggy. But I forced myself to continue. I thought, I'm just going to muscle this through. And I never allowed myself to take a breath. On top of that, I had a cervical issue for years. It started from doing handstand push-ups. Thank you, CrossFit, for that. Started doing kipping handstand push-ups, high volume stuff. And I started developing a levator scap levator scap strain. If you know what the levator scap is, a little muscle that runs from the base of your neck to the top of your shoulder blade. And it's one of the areas that tends to get strained a lot, especially when you're doing handstand push-ups. So I strained it, had some facet issues. And this is something that after the first time I did it 4 or 5 years before this, it recurred. It started happening, once or twice a year, and then once a quarter. And then at this time, it was happening once a month, maybe once every 2 months, likely more once a month. And it was just debilitating. It was hard to rotate my head. It was hard to look around, but I kept training through it and with it, and never really took time to address it, sadly. And it was always flared up, and it was flared up during this whole Open, quarterfinals, semifinal time. So I've got 2 things going against me. Let's connect this to why I was so badly injured, and then I'll tell you about the injury. I'm significantly overtrained, for sure, and I have an injury. So the number one factor in if you are going to get injured is, have you been injured before? So my injury, the debilitating injury that I had, was 100% rooted in the neck. It was a cervical issue. I really believe I tore or significantly impaired or injured cervical nerve roots, specifically 3, 4, 5 maybe, Really hard to tell. We really tested everything we could when I was injured, but it was very close. It was the roots coming out of the vertebral canals. But man, it was brutal. And that's right around that area of where the levator scap kind of crosses over. It's in that same area. So I have that going against me. That's a huge factor. Will you be injured? The question to ask is, have I been injured before? If the answer is yes, then you need to do a lot of stuff to prevent another re-injury to that spot. You have to spend more diligent time. You have to do more specific training. You have to take care for your body more in that specific areas to avoid another injury. That's just the facts. That's just how it is. Get used to that. If you've had a knee injury, you need to show some love to your knee quite often. Moving past all this, I can tell you the thing that has worked for me for my neck is I have to do some variation of a strict overhead pressing movement 2, sometimes 3 days a week. Since I've done that for the past year and a half, I have had no issues at all. It's been wonderful. I just have to make sure I consistently do that. And I'll be honest with you, I haven't done that necessarily in the past month. I still am having no cervical issues. Praise God. He has brought me out of this debilitating cervical pain that I've had. And I believe that he has brought me out of this through what we know about the human body and through actually putting in good, solid training, rehab work to make, and I wouldn't say fix the issue or resolve the issue. I would say to strengthen the area so well that the weakness that I would have had that would have caused an injury is not there. So praise God. But back to then, so I'm significantly overtrained. Significantly. I've had this injury before, and on the overtraining side, there's 2 rules that we tend to base off of. We write a lot of running programs at Vulcan. We have a 5K and a 10K running program that we incorporate all this into, and we have a hatch cycle that we incorporate this into. But there's 2 things that we have built into those templates that every single person who trains and every single person who exercises should have in their programs, either put in there by a coach, put in there by your trainer, put in there by yourself. You have to take a look at these things to make sure that you are A, training at least to maintain, B, training to improve, and C, let's go all the way to D. So C, actually training to get better, and D, training so you don't get injured. And those 2 things are, number 1, the 10% rule. So any increase in training above 10% makes you vulnerable to injury at a heightened level of 72%. So if you violate the 10% rule too much, your odds of getting injured is about 72%. What's funny is it works the other way just the same. If you decrease your training by greater than 10%, your odds of being injured is around 72%. We've got great statistics on some of this. The other one that we work into our templates, that's a preemptive method. That's a proactive method. So you can plan this into your program before. If you're doing, 6, 10, 12 week cycle, whatever it is, you can look at that prior to it. Retroactively, you can do this preemptively as well. It's difficult, but you can also take into account acute chronic workload ratio, and that takes in the intensity to which you are working out and exercising, and also it takes into account the volume. So, and in that ratio, you want to be somewhere between a 0.8 and a 1.3. If you're in that vicinity, that means you are doing what you need to do to progress and get better. If you're below a 0.8, then what you're doing is not at a high enough level to actually make you get better. And if you're above a 1.3, that's when your odds of injury skyrocket because you are Sean at that point and you are overtrained. So great ratio to work with. A lot of good coaches implement this into their athletes' programs, and it has worked. It's really solid stuff. Those are 2 big ones that I really ask everyone to look at because it'll help you stay uninjured and also make sure that you're actually getting better. So I've got previous history of injury. I'm literally currently injured on one level with the neck, and I am significantly overtrained. I'm probably not eating enough. My calorie intake is probably too low. Ellie tells me to eat more, and I would not listen, and I paid the price. So yeah, nutrition's another thing. If you are malnourished, literally definition of malnourished has to be something like your body does not have the nutrients it needs to allow you to adequately recover or maintain. I was malnourished. It had a lot of gummies when I worked out. Lots of packs of gummies went down, and that was a good thing. That was where a lot of my nourishment came in. So thank you, Dale's. Is it Dale's Gummy Bears? But anyways, it was lots of gummies. Mott's, not Dale's. Mott's. So malnourished, and then we go into the semifinal weekend. We do all this stuff, and as we do all of our team stuff, and it is a weekend, and lo and behold, we actually didn't go as a team because Ellie made it as an individual. And we went to the Atlas Games that year in Canada, and she competed as an individual in the Atlas Games, and she killed it. And it was a great decision because Sean had a terrible shoulder injury, and if we would have went as a team that year with my shoulder injury, I would have been totally useless. Everything would have been done with one arm. It would have been terrible. It would have been funny to watch, but it would have been awful. My teammates would not have liked that very much. So we didn't go. So we finished all that stuff. And for some reason, I did not deload. I did not take a rest. One of the semifinal weekends came up. I think it was the MAC, and me and a couple guys from the gym said, we're going to do a semifinal simulation. So we're going to do all the workouts for one semifinal on one Saturday. And we were going to get after it. So we're getting ready for this. I'm still training like crazy, and I don't feel good. I'm going into that Saturday, and I do not feel good. I'm groggy. I'm showing all the symptoms of overtraining. I'm groggy, and we're going to do these semifinal workouts. I'm like, all right, I'm going to do it because I said I was going to do it. And I literally said, after today, I'm taking a massive deload. I'm going to take a whole week off from the gym. If I could have just made it one more day, but I didn't. My body was hanging on by a thread, and that was the final straw. So we're doing the workouts, and one of the I think the complex that year was a really high strain complex. It was a very strenuous complex. I think it was 3 squat cleans, 2 front squats, 1 jerk, I think. And man, it was just a high strain movement. And after finishing that complex today, something felt wrong. I knew it. I felt it. Something felt off. I did 2 other workouts. I did 2 other workouts that day after that, but I think the injury really happened. This is an insidious injury for sure. It happened over time, but I think I had a moment during the lift that the thread snapped. And by thread, I mean my levator scap tore, not fully tore, but it significant, I think. And then I'm going into something else. Listen to your body. If you are injured or have been injured, if you go to work out, or if you go to do something pretty strenuous, listen to your body. If your body's saying, no, don't do this, you don't feel good, just take it easy. Do something else. Unless you have to, that is something, get a lot of athletes listening to this. And if you're competing, hey, you got to compete. You got to go. That was not me this day. I had the full ability to tell those to pull up a lawn chair, grab my Mott's gummies, and watch these guys work out. I had nothing on the line. I didn't have to. So if you can listen to your body, if you're about to go compete, then give your body the love it needs before you compete. So 3 things there. Don't be overtrained. Don't be undertrained. Get the right amount of nutrition in. Listen to your body. Those are some big things. I think there's some other ones in there too, but I'm forgetting right now on this podcast. But so I did the stuff, and then man, after doing some of the workouts, I actually cut my knee open on a sled that was there, and it cut me to the bone. So that ended my day. I wasn't able to finish the workouts with everybody. So it was a bad cut. I went straight to the emergency room so they could stitch my knee up. I was going to go somewhere else, but I didn't think they'd be able to do it. So I went to the emergency room, a freestanding emergency room, not a hospital emergency room. And they got me in, and they're about to stitch my knee up. And I remember sitting in that hospital bed, waiting for them to fix my knee. And my neck, shoulder, hand was on fire. That's when I knew something was going wrong. It started to build up and build up. I think when my adrenaline came down from leaving the gym, and I had massive electricity going all the way from my neck to my fingers. It was agonizing. And so they sewed my knee up. I drove home, and it was agonizing for the next 3, 4, maybe 5 days. This is back in 2022. We had a dinner date that night for another couple, and I was just in pain the whole time. I was trying to smile my way through it, but I was hurting. I didn't sleep that night or the next night or the night after that. My body was hurting. The thing that scared me the most, though, was over the course of that 4 or 5 days, I slowly watched my right arm become useless, become so weak that I could not use it. That is what scared me the most. About 2 weeks later, I remember I tested my shoulders. I took a 50-pound dumbbell at home and I pressed it overhead 22 times with my left arm. My right arm could not do a single one. In fact, my left arm had to help put the dumbbell in place for my right arm just to hold it in the front rack. I was beat. My wife can attest to this. I didn't want to work out. I didn't work out for probably a week or a week and a half because I was so depressed as to what was going on with my shoulder. It was so depressing. I went from being at probably one of the fittest times in my life. I felt so good and in shape and fit, and all of a sudden I felt like, man, it's just gone. I prayed very hard every day at that time. Lord, please just let me have my shoulder back to a normal level so that I can use it. I wasn't even thinking about trying to compete or trying to work out. I just wanted a functioning right shoulder that would allow me to live life. That's how bad this was. And praise God, he answered that prayer and far more. It was awful. It was awful. And came in, had my team look at it several times. We tested everything we could test. We did so much manual muscle testing to see where it was. And the weakness was truly all the way up my arm, all the way into my neck. It was a cervical nerve root issue. That's the only thing it could be. And it was brutal. It was brutal. I'm not sure exactly what happened because I'm back to 100%, 110%. My right arm is my dominant arm, so it's back to being stronger than my left arm. It can do more. I think I might notice some things at times, but I don't want to be too picky. I'm not sure if that's me noticing it or if it's just something else. But so yeah, it's 100% now. But what did I do to get back? I wanted to curl up in the fetal position and just be defeated. And I wasn't allowed to. I kept getting kicked by other people, including my wife, to start doing more for it. So I did. And I started working out. I started doing, my team looked at me. We did a ton of, I got some incredible folks in our team and they were helping me out. We were putting a game plan together. And I started doing the rehab. And then I also trained at the same time. When really the way we do rehab is entirely training anyways. So I started doing a lot of stuff, and slowly but surely my ability started to return. And it got to where I could do a pull-up again. And then a couple weeks later, I could start doing some push jerks. They were so sloppy and scary, but I could do them. I remember the first ring muscle up I did 3 or 4 months later. I remember I missed it. And I thought, I have to catch this just perfectly. I have to hit it just perfectly. And I could do it if I nailed it perfectly. And then it got to be, and then it turned into, I could be a little bit imperfect and still nail it. And then it started developing from there. And it just got so much better. I'm convinced the things that I did, and this is very labral-esque. Honestly, when we do a lot of labrum rehab for folks who have contusions there, we do a lot of pulling type rehab, a lot of negative pull-ups, negative pegboards, negative rope climbs, anything negative that the arm is pulling, but it's in a negative fashion tends to be really good rehab for a labrum. So I was doing a lot of that stuff. Man, the first time I came down the pegboard in a negative fashion, it was probably the dumbest thing I've ever done. I got up there primarily using my left arm and my right arm just kind of hanging on for the ride. And then I would negative down. I was at the top of that pegboard thinking I'm about to break my neck trying to rehab my shoulder. I would not recommend that, but I was trying to do everything I could just to figure it out. The first time I did double unders, y'all, it was the most one-sided double unders you would ever see. My right arm was just struggling to hold the handle. Left arm was doing everything, but there's a lot of stuff like that. And then over time, I'd say 6 or 7 months later, I was probably around 75-80%. I was functional. I could do everything I wanted to do in life, thank the Lord. And then I could do a lot of training too. And then, about a year later, I'd say a year and 1 month, I was at 100%. A year and 1 month later, which is just wild. I remember my father-in-law would ask me all the time, how's the shoulder doing? How's the shoulder doing? Each time I would say, I'm at 60%, I'm at 75%, I'm at 90%. And it just blew his mind because, he saw it, my wife saw it, and I couldn't use it. They saw I was very depressed about this. So you heard about all the bad things I did on the front end that might have caused this injury, and I ask you to recollect on yourself and think if this is you for any injuries that you may have now or have had in the past. But then on something I will give myself credit for, and a lot of the people around me who were my encouragers, who encouraged me to work and come back from this, thank you guys so much for doing that. You've got to fight it. You've got to fight it. When we have a nasty injury like that, we want to give in. We want to give up because it's brutal. Because you're not able, it could be small things like I'm not able to train like I want to. I'm having to scale everything to God forbid, I can't walk. You've got to fight. You've got to. No matter what the level is, no matter what the injury, you can increase your function from that. I'll never forget when I was working as a student in a neuro rehab center. So a lot of these individuals had suffered spinal cord injuries, traumatic brain injuries. So they would come in and their lives are forever changed. Their lives are forever changed. But a lot of these people would come in with these injuries, and we would be able to do some things with them over the course of rehab that took them from one place and totally changed their world so that they had 30, 40, 50% more function than they would have. And it was always the people who who worked hard that got better. Always. It was always that. If someone did not want to work hard, they didn't get better. The brain, especially after a TBI or a spinal cord injury, you have about a 6-month window of a neuroplastic state to where you have heightened learning capabilities. You can sit on your butt for 6 months and you can waste that neuroplasticity. You're going to get a little bit better. You're going to improve some function. But if you really get after it, you can take advantage of that phase. And we saw people do that. So even in injuries that are life-changing, if you work hard, you can have a better functional outcome. So I will, again, thank the people who encouraged me to work hard. I think I'm back, because of the grace of God and because of the people that He put in my life, that He gave them good work to do on me, and they did it, and I'm very thankful. Hopefully this answers the question of why am I hurt? Why am I injured? And I think it comes back a lot to what we talked about. Are you overtrained? Are you undertrained? Are you violating the 10% rule? Are you violating the acute chronic workload ratio? Are you malnourished? Are you not eating enough? All of those are the main factors. Those are the big ones. We ask everybody when they come into the clinic, how much water are you drinking? How much protein are you eating? How's your sleep? If your sleep is trash, that's a high indicator that you're about to be injured. If you're not already injured. If your sleep is bad, you've got to figure that out. If you're trying to sleep well, if you're doing whatever you can to sleep and it's still not working, go have a sleep study done. You've got to sleep. 75%, I want to say, of your human growth hormone in your body is secreted when you sleep. So if you are not sleeping, you got to find a way to do it. If you've got a bunch of babies at home or a baby that's not letting you sleep, then you cuddle that boy or girl you love on that little baby, and you pray that you find time to sleep, because that's tough. You got to take care of your kid. But you've got to find a way to sleep. So those are some big ones. Drink water. You have to hydrate appropriately. If you are dehydrated, not only does your brain shrink, your brain is mostly water, but so do your muscles. So does everything else. The space between your vertebral bodies decreases because you're dehydrated. All of these things matter in injury. And so you can take control of that. You can try to take control of your training level, your nutrition, your water, your sleep. All of that are major factors in injury prevention. I will hammer on that. The other things, how you move, okay, the exercises that you do are inferior to the ones we just talked about. They really are. The biggest one of all this that we haven't mentioned is likely your genetic predisposition. Didn't really bring it up because there's not much you can do to defeat your genetics. Genetics are somewhere in the ballpark of 70-80% of the conversation. But from an exercise perspective, from a training perspective, a lot of what we do in therapy, we're taking people and we're putting them into the right lifestyle setting. So all these things we've talked about, we're going to put your body in the best position that it can possibly be in so that we can implement the exercises, the movement changes, everything else that we need to implement to make sure your body is ready to uptake it and utilize it to create a better version of you. That's what we do. So hopefully this has answered the question of why am I injured or what's going on? Maybe you've connected a few of the dots on those. If you have done all of that and you're still injured, if all of that is perfect and you're still injured, then you might have had something traumatic. And I do want to emphasize that as well. Like, this is not going to account for anything traumatic. It's just going to account for the stuff that's more insidious in nature. If you tore your ACL while playing soccer, that's likely a genetic predisposition that could account to fatigue levels, a ton of things as well. But hopefully if you have connected some of these things I've talked about, maybe you can go back and start to answer that question. Maybe this is why. But hopefully this was a helpful podcast for you. If you have any questions at all, shoot me an email. You can comment. You can go to our website. You can check us out. I would ask you, if you are not subscribed, please subscribe to these videos. It actually goes a really long way in getting the word out. So subscribe, ring the notification bell. And as always, guys, enhance what moves you.